We got one guest here for this Monday edition of Bang the Book Radio. That is professional handicapper Kyle Hunter from HunterSportsPicks.com and daily contributor to BangTheBook.com. Kyle, how's it going today, man?
Doing well, man. I think I say this every year, but kind of like a kid at Christmas here this time of the year. I love this first week of March Madness.
Yeah, I love the first week of March Madness too. It's it's a lot of fun, and obviously we're all hoping for some fireworks. We're obviously hoping to cash a lot of our bets as well, but certainly hoping for some fireworks and those good storylines. And before we get to the NCAA tournament, let's talk about this. I know you and I really want to drive this point home. NIT, CBI, CIT, those tournaments starting Tuesday night here, so the same night as the first four games between Fairleigh Dickinson and Prairie View A&M, Belmont, and Temple. We'll talk about those in a minute. But a lot of opportunities in these other postseason tournaments that I think people kind of overlook.
Absolutely. I think there's some great opportunities to make money in those markets. Certainly those lines are not as tight as are the NCAA tournament lines. I know most people want action on the NCAA tournament games instead, but it's important to keep in mind that, money spends the same. And if you find a good value in the NIT, the CBI, CIT, I think you should get it. This is a tournament where motivation matters a lot more than anything else. We talked about that in bowl season in college football. The same is the case here. Some of these teams don't want to be in this tournament. You can't say the same about the NCAA tournament. Everybody wants to be there. So motivation is not a factor there. But when you get in the NIT, some of these teams had bigger goals. I mean, you'll see quite a few teams turn down postseason invites. I saw Jacksonville State turn down a postseason invite. Kind of surprised me for a smaller school like that. But, you see teams with, a bunch of seniors that wanted to get to the big dance. And if they don't get to the big dance, they don't want to go to the postseason. And then you get some of those teams that will go ahead and accept the invite, but then they don't seem too excited to be there. So certainly motivation is a big factor. And I do want to say also, for those early games in the CBI, CIT, NIT, things like that, I want to say that the over always has value early. The betting market knows that now, though. So if you like an over, you want to take it early. If you like an under, you want to wait, because these lines will go up after these totals come out. I think the odds makers likely won't put these numbers as low as they would have a few years ago, because everybody knows what's going to happen with the totals. They're going to get that up. But having said that, I wouldn't want to bet an under right away. A lot of these teams like to play free. Some of the teams that play slow normally will speed things up a bit. As you get deeper into the CBI, CIT, NIT, things like that, then those games do mean more to them. The over doesn't have as much value, but those first couple games, the over usually does pretty well.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where I think the motivation angles are really only useful early on in these tournaments, because once you start to make a run in this thing, you kind of go, well, you know what? Let's finish this off. Let's see this thing through. Let's try to go all the way here with it. So I think those motivation things, they work early on, and then as we keep going forward, at that point, you have to use that as well. This year, one nice thing is that I think it was I think it's been the last several years where a lower seeded team has been the home team in the NIT over the higher seeded team, which was kind of weird. We don't see that here this year, but I can tell you that there are some things that are pretty interesting. I remember a few years ago, Dayton and Ohio State played in the NIT. It could have even been last year, but that's a motivating factor. When you've got a little brother, big brother type of situation, I don't think I see any of those right now, except for TCU and Sam Houston State being a potential game like that. But you get some of these games here in the NIT and the CBI and CIT where you've got a little brother that's going to be really, really invested, and a big brother that's maybe not so much going to be there. So a lot of situational types of angles, a lot of travel spots in these tournaments as well that, those are the reasons why you can look to make some money with these.
Yeah, definitely. You can see some games like that. Dayton and Ohio State, I think, was 2 or 3 years ago. Ohio State was in the big dance last year. But, this is a tournament where I actually think Sam Houston State and TCU is a pretty good example, to be honest with you, because, TCU thought they were going to be in the big dance. So would they be too excited now to be where they are? I'd be skeptical of that. So I certainly wouldn't want to lay the points for TCU. Now, they may win because they're much deeper team and a better team playing in a much better conference. But wouldn't want to lay the points there with TCU. I think that's a dangerous spot. I do agree with you totally that, early on is the time to play that motivational angle. You get to the, semifinals of that, the NIT or something like that at Madison Square Garden. At that point, you want to win the tournament. You get that far, you're not going to pack it in at that point. So early on is the time to do that, both with overs and then also the motivational angles from the side. I do want to point out, too, the rule changes for the NIT. I think 3 of the 4 were adopted last year in the NIT as well. The 3-point line is going to be a little bit longer, 1 foot 8 inches longer, same distance for the FIBA 3-point line. The free throw lane widened a bit from 12 to 16 feet, the same as used by the NBA. The shot clock will reset to just 20 seconds after an offensive rebound instead of the full 30 seconds. And then the last one, team fouls will reset at the 10-minute mark of each half to determine free throws, and one-on-one free throws will be eliminated. So I believe last year in the NIT they played quarters. They're not playing quarters, but they're resetting the fouls at the 10-minute mark, not shooting one-on-one. So definitely something to keep in mind if you're betting the NIT.
Sorry about that. I had to mute myself to sneeze there. It's one of those things, too, where you want to look for motivation in all of these tournaments because you've got some teams that haven't made the postseason in a very, very long time, or an angle that Ralph Michaels likes to talk about. In the CIT, for example, Drake and East Tennessee State sitting on 24 wins, Marshall and New Orleans sitting on 19 wins, Texas Rio Grande Valley also sitting on 19 wins, Texas State with 24 wins. Teams want to get to those nice round numbers as well. They want to have something to show for their season. So, sometimes these teams may go, all right, well, we got to 20. Well, we got to 25. We're good now. So those are definitely angles that you want to look at as well. One team I want to talk about real quickly in the NIT, they take on Texas in the 2-7 game, South Dakota State. You've got Mike Daum, who falls short of 4 straight NCAA tournament appearances, losing in the first round to Western Illinois. That's a team that expected to win the Summit League. They've been in the NCAA tournament the last 3 years. Now they're not. So what do you think about a team like them? And there are teams that pop up like this in the NIT, but them specifically here, do they is this a second chance for them, a second chance for Daum? What do you think about the Jackrabbits?
I think this is a really tough question. I think this is likely an unbettable game for me because I don't trust Texas to be fully invested either. Texas has quite a few issues as far as, it doesn't seem like the team is that into Shaka Smart's system. It doesn't seem like, Texas puts forth the best effort on a consistent basis. So I don't trust Texas. At the same time, I'm not sure what South Dakota State would be thinking. Maybe they're disappointed to be here and they're ready to be done. Or maybe they see it as a second chance, like you said. I don't think I know the answer to this one. I would say that this is a game in general, South Dakota State and Texas, that there's too much variance. There's too many question marks that I don't know. I don't think you can fully handicap things like that. So I think that's a good game to stay away from.
I guess one more team while we're talking about kind of interesting teams here. West Virginia in the CBI. I mean, I could see them in the NIT. If they don't make the NCAA tournament, I could see them in the NIT. But the CBI, they're 14-24 and 4-14 in conference play. This is probably where they deserve to be. But man, you don't go play West Virginia basketball for Bob Huggins to be in the CBI.
No, I think Huggins is probably better at getting players to play hard in that kind of tournament than would be the average coach. So I wouldn't be rushing to go against West Virginia, and I will say that they were playing best basketball that they have here in quite a while here in the last few games, obviously, when they beat Texas Tech. I think West Virginia is a team that's a little bit better than their record in the Big 12 shows. Getting Grand Canyon in the first game, I would definitely assume Grand Canyon's motivated for that game. I wouldn't want to lay a lot of points with West Virginia, but I also don't know that I'd want to go against them too much. I think that, like I said, Huggins is a pretty good motivator, and this team has at least turned the corner a little bit here of late to where I think West Virginia may be a bit better than their record. If I can real quick, I'd like to say about another one too. Marshall, you mentioned them briefly there. Marshall is looking to try to get John Elmore the scoring record. Marshall, all-time scoring leader. I believe he needs 20 points or something like that. It's either 20 or 21 points to beat the all-time scoring record for Marshall. So whether that means that Marshall's a good bet on the side or not, it may be a little bit hard to say, but I do think Marshall will be invested in that game because they want Elmore to get that scoring record pretty badly. If you read some of the quotes from the players, it's something that everybody knows about. If he gets it in this game, maybe he gets it in that game, as many as he normally scores. But, you know, if they win this game, he gets another chance the game after. So I think Marshall would be a team that would be pretty motivated for their game.
Yeah, I think it's a good one to look at it. And also, too, I mean, Marshall, a team that they like to get up and down the floor. So, you know, they're going to try to give themselves plenty of opportunities. And also IUPUI, a team with an above-average tempo as well. I mean, that's a game. If that game goes over 200 points, I'm not going to be the least bit stunned. It would not shock me at all whatsoever. That should be a track meet type of game. I guess one more team to touch on. I just keep adding them because I think these are the conference or these are the tournaments where money can be made. I think this is where there is a lot of value. Over in the CBI, Stony Brook. I haven't seen yet. Maybe you've seen this. I was out of town for the weekend. But Jeff Bowles from Stony Brook got hired as the new head coach of Ohio over in the MAC. So he's coming back home to the Buckeye State. I don't know if he's coaching for Stony Brook in the CBI or not, but obviously this is an angle that we look at for bowl games all the time with interim coaches and all those types of things. So Stony Brook kind of winds up being pretty interesting because of the coaching situation.
Yeah, I would assume he's not coaching for them, but I don't know this. You know, I think it was a pretty good hire for Ohio. I think Bowles has done a good job at Stony Brook. You know, it's one of those where, you know, I would think that he'll do a good job there in the MAC. Interim coach is Gino Ford, so I was looking this up as I was talking.
He's an experienced guy, very experienced guy.
Yeah, definitely an experienced guy. You know, Stony Brook's still going to want to win. You know, I don't think Stony Brook comes into a tournament like this and doesn't care all at once. However, you know, a change like that certainly makes you question whether things will be quite as easy for them. You know, a new person that they're listening to in the huddle. Definitely not a positive for Stony Brook. I guess that's the way I'd say it. You know, I don't know that I'd be rushing to go against them either, but I don't think I'd be interested in betting Stony Brook. You know, you come into what could be their last game of the season, and all at once you have somebody different there. I certainly don't think that's a good thing. And I'm going to add one game right here real quick. You know, you and I both like looking at these games. Dayton and Colorado is an interesting game. You know, Dayton's certainly not accustomed to playing in a place like Colorado. I don't think that Dayton would be disinterested in this game, but as long as Colorado is motivated for this game, I think there are certainly situational edges there for Colorado based on the fact that game is at altitude.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely one to look at. Drake plays Southern Utah in the CIT. That's another altitude situation. Yep. Cal State Northridge plays Utah Valley in the CBI. And then one other one, this isn't an altitude situation, but Presbyterian, which is in Clinton, South Carolina. They're playing all the way out in Seattle in the CIT here on Wednesday. Not a trip that they make. By the way, Stony Brook going all the way down to Tampa to take on South Florida. So, you know, they're getting away from the cold winter down to a little bit of the Sunshine State. So, again, these travel situations, very, very intriguing across all of these other postseason tournaments. A lot of good opportunities in these. Hopefully we'll be able to touch on them. Maybe not as much on the show, but be able to touch on them in some written content over at BangTheBook.com, because I know in your daily article, you're probably going to be looking a lot at these NIT, CBI, and CIT types of games. All right, with that, let's get over into the March Madness side of things here, and let's start with a general overview of the field here. You think the committee did a pretty good job this time around?
Yeah, you know, usually there's a rush to say the committee did a terrible job, and if you say the committee did a decent job, you're kind of the guy that's like, oh, man, you really think they did a pretty good job. Now, I'm not saying they didn't make mistakes here, but I do think this committee did a better job than normal. You know, if you look back at the past few seasons, you could point out a ton of teams that were really screwed either by not getting in or by the draw they have. I didn't like 3 Pac-12 teams getting in, but obviously that was partially because Oregon went and won the conference tournament, which, not a big surprise to us. Oregon was playing well, and that was a team that we talked about in that conference tournament quite a bit as far as betting the money line rollover. I think Oregon's probably, playing the best of any Pac-12 team, and they, for the Pac-12, they should be happy that Oregon made it in because they probably have the best chance of anybody to win a game, even though they're a 12 seed. But, I think the committee did a pretty good job. I wouldn't have put Arizona State in based on the Pac-12 being so bad. But this bubble was weak. There weren't really a lot of good teams sitting there that could be picked. There were problems with each of those teams. When I look at the mid-majors here, I do wonder if they tried to throw the mid-majors a bone by letting Belmont in. I feel like Belmont's a good team, and I like Belmont. I was glad they got in. You could look at Belmont's resume and say, they didn't really beat that many good teams. Maybe they thought we should put in a mid-major team. I'm glad Belmont got in, like I said, definitely. And I think they do deserve to be here. But in the past, some of the teams like Belmont probably wouldn't have gotten in. So I wonder if this committee kind of intentionally did that. And then I will say UNC Greensboro, they said, was the first team out. So they were knocked out by Oregon. I think you could make a really good argument that UNC Greensboro just getting absolutely blasted by Wofford twice in the regular season, 30-point losses, probably kept them out of the big dance here. We've seen that in like college football, Ohio State. Both of us are fans of Ohio State. They've had a couple years in a row where they just get absolutely blasted in a game against Iowa and Purdue, and that hurts them. Margin of defeat definitely matters. I think that, UNC Greensboro getting beat that badly by Wofford hurt them quite a bit. And then I also was a bit surprised that there was no mention of Lipscomb being even close based on the fact that Liberty was a number 12 seed. First of all, I was a little surprised Liberty was as high as a 12 seed. But, Lipscomb being, right even with Liberty through the regular season and playing a tough non-conference schedule, I was surprised there was no mention of them.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised at that too. I mean, they have so many different formulas and they put so much spin on the selection of teams and the seeding and everything like that there's always going to be something that we don't like. And I was looking at Temple today. I wrote the first 4 previews, the 2-16 versus 16 games, the 2-11 versus 11 games. I was looking at Temple, and Temple's resume didn't really stand out to me either. But it seems like it's weird. They gave Temple preferential treatment because the AAC was really good, but then they also put Arizona State in the field, and the Pac-12 sucked. So it's kind of weird the way that they sort of structure these things. But, again, I mean, I don't think that there's any team, maybe Clemson has the biggest case since they were a top 30 team per most ranking sites, but, they had chances. They didn't take advantage of them. So maybe Clemson is the biggest bone to pick about the bubble teams, but all in all, I mean, I think that they, for the most part, got the field right.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, Clemson had tons of chances. I mean, they blew so many opportunities. I can't feel too bad for Clemson. They were given multiple chances. They were in a spot to win in multiple games like that, and they just found ways to lose. Clemson is probably the best team that didn't make it into the big dance, but they really cost themselves. So I think the committee did a good job as far as that. I'll say as far as a big name team that kind of got hosed as far as the breakdown of this, I really do think it was Michigan State. I had some people mentioning this on my Twitter feed last night, and I agree with them. If you think about Michigan State, they win the Big Ten title, they beat Michigan 3 times, and then they get put in Duke's region, the top overall team. You would think that the best number 2, or what a lot of people would consider the most deserving number 2, wouldn't be in the same one as Duke. And then you get Michigan, a team that they beat 3 times, certainly in a better spot in the bracket than is Michigan State. So that one surprised me.
Well, this is one of those where we've kind of talked about this before. There's some passive aggressiveness from the NCAA. When you've got programs that have scandals or stuff like that, this is how they kind of get back at them. A lot of times they don't levy any actual punishments. They'll just sort of passively get back at them in one way or another. This feels like one of them for Michigan State. And Michigan State, given everything that's gone on within that athletic department, I would have liked to have seen more done. But this is one of those things that the NCAA kind of likes to do is, hey, well, you did something wrong, and we're not actually going to do anything to you. But here, you're going to go, win the Big Ten title, beat Michigan 3 times in probably the second deepest conference in college basketball. Could make an argument that it's the first, and then make them, effectively the 8th seed. That feels like one of those things where they're getting back at the program, maybe getting back at Izzo a little bit for, some of the transgressions that they've had over the last, couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, they would never admit it, and that's never going to be said publicly, but we always see this as a recurring theme. So, people like you and I realize that's probably what's happening here, even though, it's not going to be said on TV. They're not going to admit it, like I said. But, yeah, I do think that that's likely the cause of this. I think that they made it very difficult for Michigan State. If they're going to get to the Final Four, they're certainly going to have to earn it.
I mean, on the bright side for Michigan State here, look, the Louisville game is a tough one. If they get Louisville, maybe they wind up getting Minnesota. Minnesota's playing pretty good ball right now. I think they get Louisville. That's a very tough game. I wouldn't be worried about anybody in that, 3, 6, 11, 14 pod. You've got an LSU team that has a bunch going on. Maryland can't win on the road. Belmont and Temple are both very live. Whoever wins that game against Maryland, Yale could very well beat LSU. Michigan State got a little bit of a favorable draw in terms of the 3 seed, but I agree that putting them with Duke, their chances of getting to the Final Four do hurt a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. When I was looking at my first glance at the bracket, I was trying to figure out how I was going to get rid of LSU because I think LSU is overseeded at number 3. But then, I wasn't really sure that Maryland is a team that I wanted to go against them with. And let's be honest, Maryland might not even get to that game. Maryland has been really disappointing away from home. So, yeah, I agree with you that, if Michigan State can get past Louisville, which I think that's a pretty tough second game for Michigan State, but if they can get past them, then they have one game that's a little bit more favorable.
All right, so let's talk about some overseeded teams here. You mentioned LSU already, and obviously with Will Wade and all the situations going on with them, very, very tough for LSU. They have the body of work. You have to respect that, but, obviously what's happened here over the last couple of weeks, very, very challenging for the Tigers. And to be a number 3 seed, they are, as you mentioned, very, very vulnerable, even in that first game against Yale, I think. What about some other overseeded teams?
Well, let's stick with the SEC to start. Mississippi State at number 5. This one doesn't make sense to me. Nick Weatherspoon, we don't know about his status. They've been intentionally pretty quiet about whether he's going to be playing again this year or not. I think Mississippi State's a couple of lines that they really prove in the regular season that would put them as high as a 5 seed. Just compare them to a team like a Cincinnati or a Louisville that's a number 7 seed, and you kind of wonder how Mississippi State would have a 5 seed. And then I'll just throw in one more from the SEC, the Ole Miss at number 8. The committee certainly liked the SEC, and to be honest with you, the SEC is much improved, and we talked about that when we were talking about their conference tournament. But, LSU getting a 3, Mississippi State getting a 5, Ole Miss getting a number 8. Ole Miss kind of, was really, really good ATS early in the year, and we talked about the fact that they couldn't keep covering at that kind of pace, and they definitely didn't. Ole Miss not playing nearly as well here at the end of the season. I'm surprised they got an 8, Mississippi State a 5, LSU a 3. I think in general, the SEC was overseeded.
Yeah, I think so too. And of course, recent form, I think, doesn't really seem like it was put into the mix too much. You have Kansas, not a great showing for them in the Big 12 tournament necessarily. You've got, a Marquette team that's a number 5 seed that they just collapsed late in the year. I know that they had the one-off performance in the Big East tournament where they actually looked like the Marquette team we saw early in the year, but that was just kind of a fleeting glimpse at that. So I agree that you mentioned them here as well. What about the Big 12? It seems like you found a couple of overseeded teams there.
Yeah, to me, Kansas, I don't have anything against Kansas. I'm not a Kansas hater by any means. Bill Self's a really good coach, but doesn't it seem like Kansas always gets a really favorable draw? I mean, it seems like somebody likes Kansas there. Every year they have some very favorable draw as far as, if they win a couple games here, they're going to be in Kansas City. Now, will they win a couple games here? I don't think there's a great chance that happens. I think that Kansas is a weak 4 seed. I think that, if they get past that first game in Northeastern, Auburn or New Mexico State would have a real chance at beating them in that second game. I think Auburn would likely be a team that I would be picking to take Kansas if it comes to that. But I just think that Kansas always has a pretty favorable draw, and I think they're overseeded as a 4 seed based on the way they've played here lately. This was a team that had a ton of promise earlier this year. D'Souza cleared, Azubuike out, Vic out. I mean, you could make an argument that was going to be their 3 best players on their team. So Kansas is definitely not what they could have been, and I don't really blame Bill Self. This is a team that they did a good job to get the record that they had during the regular season. I will point out that something that I think is pretty good to take a look at when you're looking at these NCAA tournament games is Ken Palm's luck factor. Kansas was really high on that, so he felt like they got pretty lucky this year. I think that's something at least to keep an eye on. And then Kansas State is a 4 seed. I think the big question here is whether Wade is healthy or not. If he's not healthy, this is not a team that's as good as a 4 seed. Now, I don't blame the committee on this one because their body of work is solid, but without Wade, they're certainly not a top 16 team in the country. So I think Kansas State, depending on whether Wade is healthy and is going to be able to play, might be a bit overseeded as well.
And that's a real interesting game here. I know we're going to talk about the South region in a couple of minutes, but that Kansas State-UC Irvine game out in San Jose is really, really interesting. It's also an 11 a.m. local time tip-off. So that could be a very intriguing game there for Kansas State, especially, if they're not able to get Wade back. I mean, UC Irvine, for as good as they've been, they've struggled in the conference tournament. Then they gave Louisville that game in the Big Dance a few years ago. It's kind of an interesting little spot there for them. We'll talk about that game more here in a few minutes. But how about some underseeded teams? You mentioned Cincinnati and Louisville as a couple of teams that didn't get nearly enough respect. Who are some of the others that are out there?
Yeah, I think Villanova as a number 6 seed really surprised me a lot. They're playing their best basketball late in the season. It seems like the committee didn't care about that. I don't think that should be, like a huge factor in it, but I would think that should have something to do with seeding. 25-9 in a pretty good conference with a strong schedule, a top 5 coach in the country. Look, Jay Wright's proven himself at this point. Very, very good coach. It doesn't make any sense for them to be a 6 seed, especially when Marquette's a 5 seed. Marquette lost 5 of their last 6. Villanova won that conference tournament, has 25-9 record versus a 24-9. Villanova definitely underseeded as a 6 seed. I think that probably stands out to me the most of any teams. Cincinnati and Louisville I think were pretty low at 7. Louisville especially is a pretty good team for a 7 seed. To be honest with you, I think that really brutal stretch they went through when they blew that game against Duke and then struggled right after that must have been in the mind of the committee quite a bit because they have some pretty nice wins, Louisville. They played in obviously a very good conference, so I think they're better than a 6 seed. Iowa State as a 6. When this team's healthy, they're better than a 6 seed, and they showed that in the Big 12 tournament. I think Iowa State, is one where if they had been healthy and didn't lose a few games when they were having some health issues, I think they would be, a 4 seed, maybe a 5 seed at worst. I think they're better than a 6 seed. And then the final one I'll say, Oregon. I don't like the Pac-12. I don't think anybody thought the Pac-12 was very good this year other than probably Bill Walton, but playing well. They blew multiple games this year. This Oregon team could have a much better record than what they do. I think Peyton Pritchard is really playing very well. I watched a lot of that Pac-12 tournament. He looks like the best player in the Pac-12 there in the tournament. He had been a guy that maybe underachieved a little bit earlier in the season and maybe last year as well. But Pritchard looks like a very good point guard at this point. Oregon's better than the average 12 seed right now. I think that they're underseeded there.
I will say this. I think for Villanova, getting a 6th seed is a gift because I'd much rather play St. Mary's than Murray State. I'd much rather have that matchup. At least Villanova gets to stay close to home, too, being in Hartford. I know, obviously, Marquette's in Hartford as well. But, at least if you're going to get disrespected from a seed line standpoint, at least you draw the 6-11 against St. Mary's instead of the 5-12 against Murray State. So there is that for Villanova. And, of course, we'll see who they get in that Purdue-Old Dominion game. That could be a pretty good one there. Again, we'll talk about the South in a few minutes here, but what about some general overall thoughts here from a betting standpoint on the NCAA tournament? I know you've got a few systems and angles here.
Yeah, I think these are some systems, angles that make a lot of sense. Fading the trendy underdogs. This has been a really good one year after year, and I think this is one that people really want to pay attention to. I would argue this is probably the strongest angle that I'll talk about here. Backing a favorite that's receiving 49% or less at the public bets, 116 and 82 ATS since 2005, 58.6% wins. That's been a really consistent one. I believe last year that angle actually was down a little bit for last season alone, and that was one of the first years that it's lost. I think that long-term this will continue to be a good angle because you find these teams that guys latch onto on TV and they'll say, oh, here's your upset special. That moves lines. It definitely does. The public wants to bet that underdog game. We've talked about this before, I'm pretty sure, but in the regular season, public bettors don't want to bet the underdog. But when you get in this first game in March Madness, a lot of public bettors want to take the underdog because they want to, say, hey, I called this upset. It's just kind of a pride thing. So fading those trendy underdogs has made a lot of sense. I think this one will continue to do well because that favorite gets too cheaply priced.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is a fantastic angle and something that's very important to drive home, especially, too, because a lot of these Cinderella types of teams are teams that your average Joe public bettor hasn't played all year long, doesn't even know what conference they're in, just all of a sudden happen to start paying attention to them. Not to say that it's a blind system that you want to bet that, but I kind of think of it in the context of something like a Murray State and Marquette, where Marquette's the better team. When Steve Wojciechowski's team is healthy and Marcus Howard is healthy, they're the better team. But everybody loves Morant at Murray State. Murray State's made a couple of Cinderella-esque runs here in the past. That's one of those games, and I'm not saying I'm going to bet Marquette by any means, but just it's one of those games that is structured and sets up the way that we're talking about this angle here. And it's like people forget that a good team is a good team, and just because a team is a trendy team doesn't mean they can stack up against a major conference team.
Right, I totally agree, and I think the most important point of what you said right there is these bettors really don't even know this team or what conference they're in or who they play against throughout the course of the season. They just know that they've been told by somebody that this could be an upset special, or they remember this name from a few years ago, making a bit of a run as a mid-major. Well, they have different players now. A few years ago doesn't matter. If a team won 3 years ago in the Big Dance and won a couple games and got to the Sweet 16, and now here they are again, that makes no difference. So even though the public bettor would remember that, and that would be part of their thought process. So I think fading these trendy underdogs makes a lot of sense. I think the second best angle here I'm going to talk about, round of 64 only here. A number 1 through number 4 seed has to be involved in the game, and the total is 137 or higher. In that spot, the under is 75 and 45 since 2005. That's 62.5% unders. This is a good angle. I know this is a good angle. The thought here is blowouts are more likely because it's a 1 through 4 seed, up against a 13, 14, 15, 16 seed. And as these blowouts happen, the scoring slows down at the end of the game. If you're up 20 points at the end of the game, the team ahead will be using the clock unless they're classless. And then the team behind hopefully won't be fouling. You can see some pretty ridiculous ones down, 14, 15, 16 points. But in general, a lot less fouling in spots like this. I think, this being round of 64 only, it's a very good angle, partially because, they're also playing in a neutral site that they've never played at, or almost Almost always have they never played at those sites. And then you get a higher seed to where they're likely to be farther ahead. So but I think the 75 and 45 under trend makes a lot of sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense, too. And as I'm looking through here, I mean, look at the 13 seeds that are in the field. St. Louis, UC Irvine, Northeastern, Vermont. All of them predominantly defensive-oriented teams. You know, they win with defense. And we see that a lot in the selection committee seeding process, that the 12-seed mid-majors are usually the high-octane offensive teams, and the 13 and 14 mid-majors are the defense-first teams. So that also makes some sense here to me as well, in that you mentioned seed 1 through 4 has to be involved. I think a lot of times those 13 and 14 seed mid-majors are teams that are really good defensively, and the 15, 16 seeds are teams that come from really bad conferences to where, they're just usually not very good, either offensively. They're probably a little bit better defensively, which is how they win their conference, but they're usually not very good offensively, not very efficient. So that makes a lot of sense in that regard too.
Yeah, and I think that, obviously when we say these systems or angles, I'm not saying to blindly bet every one of these, because I could find one, like a game, for example. I won't go in depth about this one, but North Carolina and Iona. North Carolina could score a lot of points on Iona. I know that's a high total, but Iona plays no defense. MAAC, very, very weak conference. And Iona, I don't think they can slow this game down. They only know one way to play. North Carolina's going to be glad to play fast. I would not want the under in that game. So I think that, you have to consider who's playing in the game, what type of way they'll play. But in general, round of 64, the top 4 seeds and the total 137 or higher, I think this is a good angle, so it's something to keep in mind. The last one, backing teams who have allowed less than 60 points the last game. This is 159 and 116 ATS since 2005. That's 57.8%. Since 2010, this is 106 and 64, 62.4% ATS. I'll be honest, I think this is probably the weakest of the angles, because if you think about it, backing a team that just allowed less than 60 points last game, there's not as many reasons to think that this one would be an amazing angle as the first two that I said. But, it's proven itself pretty consistently over the last few years. 106 and 64 ATS, 62.4%. I guess I'm kind of curious to get your take, Adam, on whether this one is one that has staying power.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess, when you're talking about a team that allows less than 60 points in a game, I mean, it's usually probably a pretty good defensive team. And they go, as you mentioned, to a neutral site. There's nerves. There's, teams throw the ball away early in the game, stuff like that. So you've got a good defensive team, and you've kind of got a perfect storm of scenarios where the atmosphere, the environment, what's at stake, maybe that kind of, sort of keeps those teams locked in defensively, I guess, for lack of a better term, because they're just not really, I guess they're just not feeling as much rhythm maybe offensively, or, so I don't know. I feel like I'm just kind of talking bullshit here to try and justify this angle. It does seem like there's some variance to it, but again, we're talking 62% over 170 game sample size. There has to be something to it.
Yeah, I'm looking at this angle a bit more as we're talking. It looks like a lot of these are underdogs, so it does make sense that, if you had a really good defense and you allowed less than 60 points in the last game, and then you're an underdog on a neutral site, to where, say you're catching 5 points and the total's pretty low, and you're a very good defense. So that, I think it makes some sense. I do think this is the weakest of the 3 angles, because fading the trendy underdogs has proven itself as a very good angle. The round of 64 unders with the high seeds, that's definitely a good angle. This one makes some sense to me, although I wouldn't want to bet on this one as much as I would the first two. I do certainly think it's interesting, though, that it's gone to 106 and 64.
All right, so we talk about bowl season, and, we talk about teams from conferences that we want to fade. I mean, the Pac-12 is awful in bowl season, and really the Pac-12 has been awful in all major revenue sports here lately. The MAC, the MAC is brutal in bowl games. A lot of people love to rush to fade the MAC. What about some conference ATS records here recently with some teams that have done pretty well and some teams that really haven't?
Yeah, so we're looking since the 2008-2009 season, so past 10 years here. CAA, 16-4-1 ATS. That's really impressive. I don't know that CAA is as good a conference as what it was some of the years during that span, but 16-4-1 ATS, pretty impressive. The Atlantic 10, 37-24-1 ATS, very good there. SEC, 55-48 ATS, which is the best of the big conferences. Mountain West, as far as that, we'll flip over to the teams that the conferences that haven't done well. Mountain West, 14-26 ATS, so they've struggled quite a bit here. The Big 12, 63-77 ATS. They're the worst power conference. Big Sky, 2-7-1 ATS, and Conference USA, 7-13 ATS. So, I mean, these aren't massive sample sizes, and again, this is not something that I just go and blindly back or fade teams in that, but I think that it's something to keep in mind. As in bowl season, I don't think any of us thought that it's just a great idea to blindly fade, a certain conference or back a certain conference, and I don't think it is here either, but I do think it's information that's kind of interesting to know.
Well, I think it's one of those things where, I haven't back tested this. Maybe you may even prove me wrong if you get a chance to do it, but I feel like the teams in the CAA, there's not really a big home road split. There's not a big home road dichotomy in that conference. Same thing with the A10, whereas in the Mountain West and the Big 12, it makes sense that those conferences would struggle on these neutral sites because those are conferences where home court advantage means, quite a bit more than a lot of the other conferences that are out there.
Yeah, I think that's likely true. Because like you said, CAA doesn't really strike you as a conference where home court advantage is really important. You can see some pretty big upsets on the road in the CAA and the A10. You don't see that too often in a conference like the Big Sky, the Mountain West, the Big 12. So, yeah, I agree with that point.
All right, so let's talk some regions here. Let's talk some matchups, and we begin in the East region, which, as we mentioned, Duke, the overall number 1, Michigan State getting screwed as the number 2. Overall, not a particularly strong region, but there are some very interesting games here. We'll start, we'll go top down here with these. With the 8-9 game, this is the late game coming up on Friday, VCU and UCF. Pretty good matchup of acronym schools there.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting matchup. Evans' status is really key here in this game because I think he's VCU's best player. VCU is not accustomed to playing against height like UCF has. Now, certainly you could say, well, nobody's really used to playing against somebody like Taco Fall, and you'd be right. But at the same time, if you look at VCU's conference, who really has a bunch of good big guys? I can't really think of anybody in that conference that has a bunch of really good big guys. To me, VCU definitely at a disadvantage there. Now, on the other hand, UCF, their turnover numbers don't look that bad. They're okay at taking care of the ball, but they don't go against the press. They don't go against aggressive defenses nearly this much. I think this is a good matchup because it's weakness versus weakness. You have a team that's able to take advantage of the other team's weakness, you would think, against the same from the other side. So, who's able to take advantage of that more? I think it'll be interesting to see what tempo this game's played at. We have a total here of 127.5, 127. I wouldn't want to take the under in this game. I think that both teams are so good at getting to the line. Both of these teams foul quite a bit. It's hard to take an under at 127 when you think there's going to be a bunch of free throws in the game. So I don't like the under. I would lean to the over in this game. Like I said, I think Evans' status is really key here. This is a game from a side standpoint. I don't have a strong lean in this game. I will tell you, I'm going to tell you the bet percentage and the money percentage on a lot of these games here. 64% of the bets on UCF, 52% of the money on VCU so far. So that's the split here early on Monday.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? You've got a VCU team that it looked like the A10 was going to be a one-bid league, and then they get bounced by Rhode Island in the conference tournament, and people immediately discard a team like that. Right or wrong, they do it. And, we'll see if that line movement continues to play out here. But I agree, this is a fascinating game. And also, I think it's really interesting because Duke is going to beat that VCU press, and they're probably going to beat it like a drum. I'd be curious to see Duke against UCF with their height, their length, their athleticism. if I'm Duke, I'd probably rather see VCU here because I think Duke can hammer them in transition. I'm not so sure that UCF is the matchup they'd want in the second round.
As a fan, I'd love to see Duke and UCF. Certainly the matchup that I'd want to see a lot more. And I agree with you. I think Duke would have an easier route there against VCU than they would against UCF. It'd be pretty amazing matchup to see Zion Williamson down there against Taco Fall. I think that'd be pretty interesting one to watch.
Not to go off on a tangent, but Zion Williamson, that dude is an effing man. That game-winning basket he had against North Carolina, that was ridiculous. I mean, why does this guy have to play a year of college basketball? It's so stupid.
Yeah, I will say, it's a hard situation here because ESPN and the powers, the media powers, have really pushed Zion Williamson a lot. He deserves that, and I think some people have kind of not liked Zion Williamson because they hear about him so much, but I just wanted to say, I don't know that this guy has really done anything that anybody should dislike him. Some of the players in the past that maybe, like a Grayson Allen or somebody to where they have, been tripping people or doing something like that. It makes some sense that they have some haters, but I don't think Zion Williamson has really done anything that anybody should be hating him. I know a lot of people don't like Duke very much, and I wouldn't call myself a Duke fan either, but Zion Williamson, a ton of fun to watch, that's for sure.
All right, so in the East region here, we go out to San Jose for a couple of Friday night games. Mississippi State, Liberty, Virginia Tech, St. Louis, and obviously none of these teams anywhere near San Jose. So travel factors, time difference factors, stuff like that. Mississippi State and Liberty here in the first one that we're going to touch on. What are your thoughts on this game?
Well, I just said to you that Mississippi State is overseeded, and I do think that they are. I also think that Liberty is overseeded as a 12 seed. And I wanted to say that as you look at the percentages here, I guess before I get too deep into this, I want to ask Adam for his input on what he thinks about this one. I kind of have my views on this, and we'll see if you share it. But what do you think of the fact that, here we are, it's Monday morning. There's already been a lot of bets on these games. You look at the ticket count, there's a lot of bets already. People are very heavily invested in March Madness. Do you think that these early bets in March Madness can still be the public? We talk about the fact that, in a lot of games in the regular season, the early bets are always sharp money. I don't know that that's necessarily always the case here. What do you think?
Yeah, and as you look at this game, Mississippi State 7-point favorite over Liberty. I think that a lot of this is, to borrow a phrase from what Brent from DSI likes to say, I think it's kind of pseudo-sharp money. It's people that, maybe aren't the most successful long term, but they're out there trying to get out in front of numbers a little bit, trying to manipulate and massage the markets. I think it's really hard for, there are some sharp bettors out there that are grabbing numbers, and I certainly don't want to discredit their positions and what they're able to do. Right. But I think that a lot of this is just kind of people trying to push the market one way or another, maybe influence the public to kind of jump onto a trendy team or, pay for an overpriced favorite, something like that. I think it's just kind of, the normal market that we see from a college football standpoint, where some sharp guys are getting early numbers, but I think a lot of times it's the pseudo-sharp numbers grabbers that, like to play a higher volume, play smaller edges in hopes of getting, more profit over the long term as opposed to hammering a big edge.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, the public is more invested early in March Madness than they would be just about any other time. Selection Sunday, everybody pays attention to that. Everybody hears them talking about on TV, who picked this upset, who picked other upsets. You look at some of these games as I'm looking through the ticket counts, some of the, 5-12 games, the typical upset picks, they have a lot of bets already. And there's a pretty big variance in how many bets there are from game to game. This Liberty and Mississippi State game has quite a few bets on it, 70% of the bets on Liberty and 90% of the money on Liberty. This line's going to go down even more. So if you like Liberty, I think you take +7. This one's going to be 6.5, maybe even 6 later, because everybody's taking Liberty here. I wouldn't say I have a strong opinion on this side because I think Mississippi State's overseeded. I don't think Liberty's a team that I would have thought as pulling a big upset as a 12 seed, but I don't think Mississippi State's that good either. So, the biggest takeaway I have from this game is the public is going to like Liberty in this game. People are going to tell them this is that 12-5 upset. So, I think if you like Mississippi State, you want to wait.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see what's going on in the markets. And in particular, too, you've got, again, like the Super Bowl, this is the first major sports betting event with, several states in the mix. It's not just Nevada now. And obviously that doesn't necessarily impact the offshore market by any means, but just that, there's going to be a lot more money out there in the till across the nation, across the world. And it'll be interesting to see, some of the differences between, say, a DraftKings or a FanDuel sportsbook in the Northeast and a brick and mortar out in Nevada that's done this forever, and an offshore market that, will take bigger bets from people than a lot of brick and mortars will. So I'm curious to see what, the three different environments are like here for something like March Madness, where, again, as you mentioned already, this is the one time of the year in college basketball when the public can move a line.
Absolutely. I think that the public can move a line now better than just about any other time. Obviously, we see the Super Bowl, the amount of money that comes in. But, March Madness is a very big betting event. And like you said, I'm very interested to see what the differences will be from place to place based on the fact that, this is a little bit of new territory for us based on the regulations that have changed as compared to a year or two ago. So certainly interested to see what happens there.
All right, so we move on to the other game there in that San Jose pod. This one, Virginia Tech and St. Louis. You've got Virginia Tech here, a 10.5-point favorite, total of 126 for this one. The Billikens went on a run, stole a bid from a bubble team. Good for them. What do you see them doing here against Va Tech?
Well, Justin Robinson likely to be back here, based on what head coach has said. He should be back in this game. Robinson's been out for a long time. I think that, the question is he 100% healthy, and can he get right into it and, be in top form? I think there's certainly questions about that. I would say I have to lean towards St. Louis here plus the points. St. Louis plus 10.5. This is St. Louis defense that was tremendous throughout the A-10. And I remember saying before the season, I thought St. Louis had the most talent of any team in the A-10. They underachieved in the regular season. I don't know that Travis Ford is the best, in-game coach. But St. Louis played really well in that A-10 tournament. Very good defense. You've got a total of 126. I can't lay 10.5 points in a game like this. I think Virginia Tech has too many question marks.
Well, and this is a very late start. I mean, it's about a 7 o'clock local time start, but a 10 o'clock start time for Va Tech, 9 o'clock for St. Louis. So it's going to be nice and late, and that's if that Mississippi State and Liberty game doesn't go to overtime or something like that. So late start here, and you kind of wonder if it takes the teams a little bit of time to get into the game and how things progress going forward. Maryland draws the winner of Belmont and Temple. I previewed Belmont and Temple over at BangTheBook.com here this morning. Got all first four write-ups done here early in the morning, which is crazy because I got home at 2 a.m. But Maryland is a team, I don't think either one of us like them, no matter who they play in that first-round game.
Yeah, I mean, Maryland's a team that has that talent that they should be able to win a couple games. But look at what they did on the road or on neutral site this year. They haven't proven themselves. So, hey, if you want to stick your neck out, if you as a listener want to stick your neck out and say Maryland's going to win 2 or 3 games, more power to you. I can't do it. Maryland could win those games, and it wouldn't be stunning, but they haven't proven anything yet. So I want to see Maryland do something before I, make a bold prediction about Maryland getting very far in this tournament. I'm not sure that, Mark Turgeon's teams have really proven anything on the road or on neutral sites really in any of these recent seasons, and they're a pretty young team this year as well. You would think they might be even better in the years to come as long as some of those guys stick around. Depending on who they play here, I don't know. I guess you could argue who they'd rather play here, Belmont or Temple. Belmont is a team that people like as a mid-major. The love for Belmont might be a little bit out of control as far as the price against Temple. I'm not saying that I really like Temple a lot in that game either, but 3.5-point favorites at a lot of places for Belmont. I don't know. I mean, Belmont is a good team. They've proven that they're a good team, but are they that much better than Temple on a neutral? I don't know. I think that's a little bit too high. And, what would happen in a Belmont versus Maryland game or a Temple versus Maryland game? I mean, I think that either of those 11 seeds would definitely have a chance. You have to be a little bit concerned about Belmont as to whether they have the size to go against Maryland. And, Belmont's been banged up a little bit, so you would want Belmont to be healthy. Nick Musinski, questionable for that game against Temple. Definitely keep an eye on his status. Very, very important there.
Yeah, Temple's not a great team defending at the rim, so if Musinski's able to go, and I did write about this in my preview, then I do like Belmont. For right now, Belmont is small lean, but if he's able to go, creates some matchup nightmare problems there for Temple. Maryland's a favorite over both of these teams in the first round, right? What kind of numbers are we looking at here?
Yeah, Maryland's a favorite over these teams. Belmont being favored by 3 or 3.5 makes you think that, Maryland would maybe be favored against Belmont by 3 points, 2.5 or 3 points, against Temple by maybe 5 points or something like that.
All right, so LSU and Yale, we kind of touched on this one already, so we don't need to spend too much time on it here, but Yale held serve in the Ivy League Conference Tournament. I know you cashed a big future on that one. Kudos to you for that. What do you think about this one here? Early start time on Thursday around lunchtime.
Well, there's no way I'd lay the points here with LSU. There's only one way I could bet this game on the side. I wish I was getting more points. However, I don't think you're going to get more points here. You got 55% of the bets and 72% of the money on Yale. I don't see anybody rushing to back LSU in this game. I think that, 8 is probably the best you're going to do now if you like Yale. So if you like Yale, you probably want to bet this one earlier. I will say the total here is interesting to me because this is one of those higher-seeded games to where it fits into that system that was 75 and 45 to the under. But do you really like this one under that much? I mean, it is a high number at 160, but it's an 8-point spread instead of something like 12 or 13, to where there could easily be fouling at the end of this game. And those foul fests can get out of control at the end of some of these games, especially in the NCAA tournament. People don't want their season to be over. And Yale has played pretty fast and has a very good offense. LSU certainly happy to run. You wouldn't think either defense would have a lot of success here, so this would be one of them. I would not want to play the under here.
All right, let's go to Louisville and Minnesota in Des Moines. Minnesota was a bubble team, played pretty well in the Big Ten tournament, took themselves off the bubble. Draw a tough assignment here against Chris Mack's team, but there's some pretty interesting storylines to this game.
Yeah, I mean, this is all by chance, right? They didn't do this on purpose.
Oh, no, of course not.
It's also interesting that I believe this is the first game, right? So this is the first game on Thursday. This is one where it's going to be talked about quite a bit, and we don't have to go deep into what the storyline is here, but everybody knows what's going on in this one. Louisville's the better team here. I don't think there's any question about that. The line I think is fair. If I had a lean, I would lean toward Louisville here, -5. Minnesota's been inconsistent this year. Obviously, Louisville's been inconsistent, too. They had that really bad stretch there in the middle of the season. It's not like I forgot about that. I think Louisville's upside is higher than Minnesota's. Minnesota pretty reliant on, a couple guys to have really big games, where Louisville's a deeper team. The total here I think is very fair. 135, 136, somewhere in that range, where I would have put this one as well. So I don't have any strong lean on this game. I think it's an interesting game from a fan standpoint, probably not the best game to bet.
Well, as for those that don't know here, the head coach at Minnesota, Richard Pitino, obviously we all know, used to be Rick Pitino at Louisville, Richard's father. We all know how that played out. So, that's what I give the committee credit for that. They do like to throw some of these little wrinkles in there and do like to have some fun with this. So, all right, we transition over to the South region here. Again, we're going to run a little bit long with this one since we talked about the NIT, CBI, CIT, and some general stuff. We'll have a shorter segment on Wednesday when we just do the West and the Midwest and I guess maybe recap some NIT type stuff. Let's start. You don't have any notes on this game, but I do want to touch real quickly on Virginia and Gardner-Webb here because, look, obviously everybody knows what happened last year. Virginia here, 23.5-point favorite against the Gardner-Webb team that's not as good as UMBC was last year, I don't think. A very surprising conference champion here in this one. I'm curious to get your thoughts on what happens with this line, because everyone's going to say, okay, well, Virginia was embarrassed last year. They're not going to take any chances this year. I mean, does this line go up from 23.5?
I don't know. I mean, 62% of the bets are on Virginia right now, about the same as far as the money. So I think this number is probably going to stay pretty flat. I don't think that Virginia is going to, overlook anybody after that. It would be hard for them to do so. Gardner-Webb's not as good as UMBC was last year. DJ Laster did some really good work there in that conference, but, Virginia has big guys. They have the depth in the front court that the teams that Gardner-Webb usually plays don't have. So Virginia has it. Gardner-Webb's not used to playing teams that have it. The under may be a decent play in this game. I don't think Virginia is going to give up very many points in this game. This could be one of those high seed games that stays under the total. This one doesn't fit that system because the total is only 131 or 130.5. But I do think that my lean in this game would be the under. This, to me, projects as a game where Virginia holds Gardner-Webb to a very low number. That's probably the question mark here as far as the side, is whether Virginia is going to score enough to cover 24 points or whether they're just going to back the tempo down to the extreme and, win by something like 20 points.
All right, so we move to the 8-9 game here. This is between Ole Miss and Oklahoma, and Oklahoma may be a little bit overseeded as a 9 seed as far as I'm concerned. But something interesting about this game, we talk about home court advantages, and we talk about, when teams are either close in proximity, close geographically, maybe just for one reason or another, have a good feel for a venue. Ole Miss plays here every year in Columbia. So does that give them an advantage here against Oklahoma in this one?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a positive. I think both of these teams are probably overseeded, to be honest with you. 55% of the bets on Mississippi, 90% of the money on Mississippi. So somebody's thinking that way, close to home in a place that they have played many times before, at least somewhat close to home, and they've played there certainly plenty of times. This is not a game that I'll be betting. I don't find much value here. I think that, both of these teams have shown glimpses of being pretty good, but they're not very consistent. Oklahoma's defense is good. They're not that good on offense. Mississippi started out the year really well, didn't finish out the season nearly as well. I think both of these head coaches are good coaches, but I don't see any big edge here.
All right, so we move down to the 5-12 game. Usually the 12 line is reserved for, mid and low major conference champions. Well, I don't know, maybe the Pac-12 is a mid-major now. I don't know. Wisconsin and Oregon out in San Jose on Friday afternoon. This is pretty interesting because you've got a 5 seed in Wisconsin having to go cross country to the left coast to San Jose, so that definitely helps Oregon. Oregon, very hot team running through the Pac-12 conference tournament with 4 wins in 4 days. It's kind of shaping how the market looks for this game.
Yeah, this one is a really complex handicap. This one went from Wisconsin by 2 to Oregon was favored last night by 1.5 points, and now we're back to either pick 'em or Wisconsin -1. This is, I believe, for this day, this is easily the highest ticket count, not even close, actually. So there's a lot of action on this game. A lot of people like Oregon. 55% of the bets are on Oregon here, about the same on the money. I want to like Oregon in this game. It does worry me that it seems like so many people do like Oregon here. This is one where obviously it's going to be a low-scoring game. We know the style that both of these two teams play. The total's 118.5. Some people have blindly taken the over at 116 just because they take overs if they're that low no matter what. Hopefully they'll keep pushing that number up. I'd love to see a 121 or something here in this game. I don't think that'll happen, but Wisconsin has their weaknesses. They don't really have good guards. Pritchard is certainly the best guard in this game, not even close. The thing that I think makes this matchup really interesting is Wisconsin goes through Ethan Happ so much. Oregon does have good big guys defensively. This is an Oregon team that's pretty good on defense in general, and I think that they'll be better in the front court on defense than most of the teams that Wisconsin has faced. They have some really good shot blockers on the inside. You look at Kenny Wooten, very good player in there. Some very good big guys for Oregon. They have depth in the front court. I mean, I kind of like Oregon, and I kind of am worried about liking Oregon in this one based on it seems like so many other people like Oregon as well.
All right, so the other game in that pod there in San Jose, Kansas State and UC Irvine. We touched on this game a little bit already, where you've got very early 11 a.m. tip-off out in San Jose. Kansas State team going out to California, UC Irvine virtually staying relatively close to home here for this one. Not that they've got a huge alumni base or anything like that, but they don't have to travel very far. So kind of an interesting equalizer in this game, I think.
Yeah, this one, this is an early start too. So this is an interesting game. Everybody likes Irvine here. This is going to fit the angle that I talked about the fading the trendy underdog. So if you just want to back, the public, go against the public and fade the public with that angle, you're going to want to take Kansas State here because I know that Irvine is going to be the trendy underdog. 72% of bets on Irvine thus far, 79% of money on them. This line's gone from 5.5 down to 4.5. As far as projecting this line, it would be hard to imagine this line going too much lower, right? I mean, you can't have Kansas State minus 2.5 or 3 here in a game like this. So I think 4.5, maybe 4, the lowest this game could go. I can't imagine it going lower than that. Again, a low-scoring game, so that helps you if you like the underdog here. Irvine plays in such a weak conference. I mean, Irvine, I have to say, they played really well in that conference tournament. They were on a mission. We talked about that they were clearly the best team in the conference. They hadn't really proven it in past conference tournaments. Boy, I mean, they played really, really well in that conference tournament this year. I think Irvine's a quality team. Kansas State, not nearly as good without Wade. I think Wade probably won't play in this game. I don't know that for sure, but certainly that's something to keep an eye on. Again, the under is tempting at 120. It's hard to take under 120 because, you have one stretch of high-scoring game or you get any kind of foul fest, you're in big trouble because that's such a low number. But this is one where I would be cautious about taking UC Irvine because everybody and their brother and mom and dad seems to like them.
This is one of those games to me where if you're an elite defensive team in a premier conference going against a really good defensive team in a terrible conference, give me the elite defensive team that plays the better schedule. Because at least they're accustomed to scoring in, games like this or against other really good defensive teams. For UC Irvine, they're going to face a team that, it's kind of one of those anything you can do, I can do better types of games. Kansas State does everything better than UC Irvine and does so in a stronger conference. So I get the sentiment. I also, again, that this game is in California and that Dean Wade may not play. But for Kansas State, I mean, they're going to play defense with or without Dean Wade. And they're going to have more scoring options probably just because they've got more talent. They've got better recruits. I would think that, they've probably got the better coach here in this game as well. So I think UC Irvine is a very dangerous upset pick, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, devil's advocate to that point is that UC Irvine has a couple good wins on the road earlier this season at St. Mary's, at Texas A&M. Texas A&M not a great team by any means, but they also won at home against Montana. I mean, if you want to look at the other side of it, they also lost at home to Utah State by 24 points. They lost on a neutral to Toledo. I mean, they're a good team. UC Irvine's a good team, but at 4.5 points, I don't think you're getting enough points for me to take UC Irvine there. I would have to lean toward Kansas State.
We touched a little bit on Villanova and St. Mary's, with Villanova being underseeded as a 6, but getting a better matchup than Marquette here. Anything else you want to add to this game in Hartford on Thursday night?
Yeah, this is one I like more than most of them we talked about. I like Villanova here. I just really don't think St. Mary's matches up well. St. Mary's usually has a coaching advantage with Bennett being a really good coach. They don't have a coaching advantage in this game. Jay Wright has proven himself as a very good coach. I like the way Villanova has been playing here of late. Also, look at where this game's being played. I mean, this is a really, really long ways from home for St. Mary's. I like Villanova minus 5.5 here.
Well, and we all know that college athletics are always on the up and up. I mean, nothing fishy ever goes on in college athletics. The fact that St. Mary's beat Gonzaga, it smelled funny. It really, truly did. I mean, it was almost like I'm not going to say it was collusion. I would joke about it because I'm a big fan of the league. But, it doesn't seem right that St. Mary's all of a sudden plays their one absolute best game of the year against the Gonzaga team that doesn't give a shit. Like, St. Mary's just – it feels like a false – it feels like a false team to me. They just feel like a team that isn't very good, that caught Gonzaga at the right time. Maybe they wanted two teams from the West Coast Conference in this thing. You could certainly make a case for that. I think Villanova wipes the floor with them. I really, truly do.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that, that St. Mary's win over Gonzaga was one of the most confusing games I've seen in a long time. Like, you just wonder afterwards, what just happened in that game? And you think, man, this Gonzaga team that is so good on offense every single game scores, 0.76 or 0.78 points per possession, something in that range. Look, they're easily the most efficient offense in the country throughout the year. And all at once they can't score at all against St. Mary's. St. Mary's is not great on defense. They're better at offense than they are at defense. That was a very strange game. I don't think this is a good spot for St. Mary's at all. Maybe if they faced a different type of team, they'd be a good upset pick. But I don't like this matchup against an underseeded Villanova team.
Gonzaga won the first meeting 94-46. And then won by 14 on the road to end the regular season. And then all of a sudden, they score 47 points in the conference championship game. Come on. Come on. All right. Anyway, Purdue and Old Dominion. This is the late game up in Hartford on Thursday night. This is a pretty intriguing little game because I guess I was too high on Purdue after seeing what they did in the Big Ten Conference Tournament.
Yeah, I have a Purdue future at a good price, and I wouldn't say that I am in love with their path here. I don't love, even though it was a good value when I got it. I don't know that Purdue is going to be a team that gets that far. I will say teams have not proven anything in the NCAA tournament. He is a pretty good coach, but they haven't really done anything in the NCAA tournament. I think Old Dominion, Jeff Jones is a really good story. I like the fact that they got here. I don't know how Old Dominion won all those games in Conference USA in the tournament. It seemed like every game they were behind and they'd pull it out right at the end. They just find a way to win. You can give them credit for that. Old Dominion has to slow this game and kind of ugly it up. I think they can probably do that fairly well. I lean them plus the points here. Old Dominion's so good on defense that Purdue doesn't have a lot of great scoring options. Edwards is a great player. Purdue has height, obviously, with Harms, but not a big-time scorer in there. I think Old Dominion plus 13 would be my lean in this game, and I will say that this one's about 50-50 on the bets and the money, so nobody seems to have a real strong opinion here.
All right, one more game to tackle here on the show, and then we'll be back on Wednesday to talk about the bottom of the bracket with the West and the Midwest. Iowa and Cincinnati in Columbus, another one of these situations here where, Iowa, while this is at Nationwide Arena and not at Value City Arena, Iowa at least knows the area, but Cincinnati, huge crowd advantage here, making the short trip up I-71. So that should be interesting Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I like Cincinnati in this game. I think that, this is a fair price on Cincinnati. It does concern me that 77% of the bets are on Cincinnati. I don't like going with that heavy of a favorite that's getting that much money. But, 77% of the bets, 84% of the money here on Cincinnati. Iowa has not finished the season well at all, and I don't like Iowa's defense. Cincinnati has their shortcomings. Look, Cincinnati's not a team that I think will make a really deep run in the tournament, but Cincinnati plays defense. Jaron Cumberland's a very good player. They definitely have a home court advantage here, no doubt about that, a major home court advantage. I think 3.5 points. I think that's a fair price here on Cincinnati. I'm kind of interested in the total, too. It's going to be interesting to see who gets their pace of play here, preferred pace of play. Iowa wants to push. Cincinnati clearly wants this to be a half-court game. Cincinnati's a good rebounding team, and I think they could beat Iowa on the boards here. I like the better defense here with the home court advantage.
Real quick question for you here about this pod in Columbus as we go down to the Midwest region very quickly. Had a listener question about this one, about a Utah State future at 500-1. Now, Of course, they're, slight favorite to beat Washington, and after what we saw from Washington in the Pac-12 championship game, Utah State very live there. Of course, the problem is Utah State wins, they run into North Carolina. So the question from @Seavert_3 was, if I take this Utah State price at 500 to 1, what do I do in the second round when they play North Carolina?
Well, at that price, it's certainly a good price. They need to beat Washington. Because that next game is North Carolina, you can't do anything in the first game, in my opinion. When they play North Carolina, unless you think for some reason that, they have a real chance in that game, which, North Carolina's been upset in some of these games here in the past. I will say that I think this North Carolina team is playing pretty well right now. I'd be pretty surprised if they lost that game. I think you'd be pretty aggressive hedging there because you try to get out of that one with a profit. The chances are pretty high that would be the end of the road for Utah State. So, if you hedge aggressively there and they happen to beat North Carolina, then you're probably going to have to take the next round off as far as betting the other side because, you can't hedge aggressively every single game or it's not going to make any sense. But, if it were me, I would definitely be trying to get out of that in that North Carolina game. I think that's a pretty tough matchup.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I said, and we also had a listener question about Iowa State, but I wanted to make sure that I talked about this Utah State one because I'm sure that price will be on the move here. The only thing that I mentioned is maybe you wait and see if Utah State goes up, 6 or 8 points at some point in the first half. Maybe you get North Carolina, minus 200 as opposed to minus 450 or something like that. Obvious downside is if North Carolina is, on a 15-3 run to open the game, well, then you can't hedge at all. So there's some risk management, some risk tolerance in there, but I don't know. I think to me with a 500 to 1 with such a small initial investment, I'd probably look and see if I can get a cheaper live money line on North Carolina.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's certainly dangerous. I think that, probably if you want to take North Carolina and you want to wait for the live, you probably want to put something on them pregame, right? I mean, you could put part of it on them pregame and say, I'm going to watch this one live, and there's usually some kind of run by the underdog, so I should be able to get a better price at some point. But, if North Carolina starts up 12-0 or something like that, then if you have no position on North Carolina beforehand, then you're in a bad spot.
Well, and we will talk with Kyle about that Iowa State future coming up here on Wednesday's show. I want to talk about the Utah State one because it's a bet that hasn't been made yet. The Iowa State 125 to 1 already has been made, so we can talk about hedging that one on Wednesday's show. Kyle Hunter of HunterSportsPicks.com and also daily contributor to BangTheBook.com. A lot of stuff going on this week, huh, man?
Yeah, busy week. I've already let the wife and kids know that they're not going to see too much of me this week. Maybe when I'm watching the games here on Thursday and Friday. But, hey, a busy week. I love this week. So a lot of stuff going on. Check out the Free Picks newsletter at HunterSportsPicks.com if you haven't already. Been on a really good run here of late, 15-4 in my last 19 premium plays. It's been a very good season. So we'll hope to continue that into March Madness, and there will definitely be plays from the NIT, CBI. So you can check out my March Madness All Access Pass. I've lowered the price on that one. That will include all the NIT and CBI plays as well, so you get every play from now through the end of the season.
And, of course, as always, you can follow Kyle on Twitter at KyleHunterPicks. Kyle, I know we ran long, man. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I know you got a lot of stuff to get to, and we'll talk to you again on Wednesday.
That sounds good, man. In the words of Bart Scott, can't wait.
There you go. I know you've been waiting to drop that one, so I'm glad that you finally had the chance to do it. Yeah, make sure you follow Kyle on Twitter at KyleHunterPicks and check out his daily article. I'll talk to you again on Wednesday, man.
All right, sounds good.
There you go. There's Kyle Hunter. Again, HunterSportsPicks.com, BangTheBook.com, and at KyleHunterPicks on Twitter. So we know the draw now for March Madness, obviously, and all the conference tournaments have been settled. Head on over to PropSwap.com/BTB. See what's listed over there for the NCAA Tournament. Some NIT futures probably over there as well by now that we know the draw for that. Also, NBA, NHL, college hockey, some football stuff. There'll be baseball stuff going up over there at PropSwap as well. Again, a futures marketplace where sellers list their tickets at odds that maybe you can't get at another sports book. So very good time of year to check out PropSwap.com BTB. See what's out there. Get a feel for the market. And, hey, who knows? Maybe you'll see something that you can do from a seller's perspective as well.